Some shocking stuff that he wrote about why he's against cryptocurrency, because he says, like, he keeps on being forced to talk about this, but he's now joining the fray and he's talking about why he believes that Bitcoin is bad. Transaction costs and tethers, why I'm a crypto skeptic. Because he says, if you look at the broad sweep of monetary history, there's been a clear direction of change over time, namely one of reducing the frictions of doing business and the amount of real resources required to deal with those frictions. First, there were gold and silver coins, which were heavy, required lots of security, and consumed a lot of resources to produce. And then he said, ultimately, we then adopted fractional reserve banking, and then the central banks held the gold and silver. And then we got rid of that, and we have pure fiat, and it's all been frictionless and perfect. And that this has been that it's just natural evolution that we wanted a more frictionless sort of money.
Right.
Here comes the money rip.
No, I'm not going to rip this money. But so Paul Krugman is saying that this is frictionless money. He then goes on to say in that piece that the money is backed by men with guns.
Yes, that's what I was going to get into.
Right, get into that. Get into that.
So here he's saying that the evolution of money, and we're going to get back to that because I don't believe his evolution of money, but he also says that, you know, the reason why Bitcoin is a bubble and it'll burst is because it's backed by nothing. Whereas the dollar, he says, in normal life, people don't worry about where the value of green pieces of paper bearing portraits of dead presidents come from. We accept dollar notes because of other people will accept dollar notes. Yet the value of a dollar does not come entirely from self-fulfilling expectations. Ultimately, it is backed by the fact that the U.S. government will accept dollars as payment of tax liabilities. Liabilities it's able to enforce because it's a government. If you like, fiat currencies have underlying value because men with guns say they do. And this means, he says, that their value isn't a bubble that can collapse if people lose faith.
So an out-of-control state that is charging illegal taxes that came around in 1913. They're completely...
Those income taxes were introduced into the United States in 1913. Right. Before that was sin taxes.
That's not even obligational, okay? If you don't use this paper money that's backed by said state, a guy with a gun will come and blow your head off. And Paul Krugman describes that as having no friction. So yeah, I guess if Paul Krugman, if a guy showed up at his apartment with a machete and cut his head off, then it'd be like, that was frictionless. It only took 2 seconds. And then, okay, his head's missing. It only took 2 seconds. There's no friction there. We got our $20, we got our worthless piece of paper, though, from Paul Krugman. Meanwhile, Bitcoin is an exchange of currency that does not require men with guns. That's its primary use case. You don't need violence to exchange in Bitcoin. Like the New York Times columnist is suggesting that only the money is violence. This is underwriting all the wars. This is underwriting the Pentagon. They take half of our taxes. This is terrorism, okay? So Paul Krugman is saying, oh, if you're able to exchange back and forth without violence, oh, I'm against that. Why? Is it because that's where your money comes from, Paul Krugman? Are you just a lackey for the war industry? Oh, what a surprise, Paul Krugman. Your kids must be really proud of all the blood that you have on your hands, you disgusting pig. But anyway, what else?
Well, I mean, I'm going to tie this together with that first story that we talked about, which is the Financial Conduct Authority says that they were created by politicians to create an illusion that there was somehow regulation of the banking sector going on and none of these crimes would happen again. But had Paul Krugman, what you're seeing there as well, is him trying to deny any of the theories of Austrian school. So in Austrian school, they would say all value is subjective. It all comes from the human mind. And he's saying, no, a gun in your face by a SWAT team or the FBI will force you to believe in the dollar again. If you lose faith in the US dollar, they will knock down your door, hold a gun to your head, and demand you have believe in the value of the US dollar. That's what he's saying. But if he also read David Graeber's History of Debt, he would have found that it's humans, it's people, because they have their own minds and thoughts, and that includes trust and not trusting. So what happens when we go to gold, it wasn't about friction, it was about trust. So we would have credit-based systems for very long periods of time when things were harmonious, and the soldiers and the people believed in the government, and they had faith in the government. During times of war and conflict, it was the mercenaries and the soldiers who didn't believe that their government would be basically good for the credit, for them to go across to the Middle East from Rome and go down to Jerusalem and start fighting some other people around the world. They wanted gold, right? So these gold standards and stuff like that were based on the trust of the people. Obviously, our governments are having it very good with a pure fiat system. They love it. Our government doesn't have to do anything. But the people are the ones that chose Bitcoin. They're the ones that created Bitcoin. The Genesis block of Bitcoin on January 3rd, 2009 said Chancellor on brink of second bailout. That was referring to the bailout of RBS and these other UK banks. So these all go hand in hand, that it's all about, they have created these Potemkin currencies, Potemkin regulators to back their fiat fake system. And now it's basically, they're exposed. All the population sees that it's a fake village. They see it there and they're like, dudes, you're trying to make me believe. I'm going to use Bitcoin instead because I have more faith in that than I have in Paul Krugman's fiat currency.
Well, you mentioned gold and silver, and it relates to war, and particularly Roman times, they're paid in silver. And when they couldn't pay them silver for keep the empire intact, the empire collapsed, and they got into coin clipping and all this other stuff. And you mentioned Austrian economics, which came after Keynesian economics. It was kind of like, okay, where is the economics going? But Paul Krugman is a legacy guy holding on to the Keynesian economics. And, you know, war, currency, and the dollar intersects nicely in the Iraq war experience. Here's an illegal war. The U.S. and Britain went in. They slaughtered 500,000 innocent Iraqis, including children, women. And to try to extricate themselves from that problem, they flew in on a huge cargo plane, $7 billion, Paul Krugman paper money, on pallets to try to pay people off so that they wouldn't show the dead bodies. Don't tell the American people that we just slaughtered 500,000 people. We'll put our own guy in place here, and we're going to try to keep this all hush-hush while we go to Libya. And we depose Gaddafi and turn that into a massive terrorist state.
What happened to his gold?
You know, his gold. We stole his gold, right? Tony Blair was there like, hello, Gaddafi, I'd really love your gold. What?
You have to do his crooked eye.
It's like, hello, I'm Teddy Blair. I'm with the quartet. Anyway, stay tuned for the second half. A whole lot more.